Oh, we're live.
We are live.
This is exciting. Let's go
Yeah.
right to those intros and have joy.
Okay. So, Dominic, great to see you.
Great to see you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us for today's conversation, Profitable Commerce in Today's Tariff Economy. Dominic and I are going to dive into some of the conversations we've been having with different stakeholders that have been really impacted by all the flip flopping with tariffs, whether it's consumers or retailers or the shippers, the people that are involved in logistics. Um, we've been having a lot of conversations with these different groups, and we just thought it would be great to unpack some of what we're hearing and some of the learnings we've heard to help companies stay sharp, agile, and profitable in this uncertain period. So, I am Jamila Jamani. I am the founder of Parla Retail. We are a software company that helps retailers bring a more human touch to the online shopping experience. Like many of you in our audience, I have spent a lot of time in retail on both the consumer side, the shopping side of being on the store floor, as well as operations in the back office. So I really I love the industry and can feel a lot of the confusion and also the pain that different people are have been going through over the last couple months. And
I love it.
Dominic, I will not, I'm, small intro, but really excited to have you here with your wonderful, super amazing experience and very wonderful personality. You sit at this incredible intersection of operations, media, and a lot of digital strategy. You've helped companies grow um, and move forward, specifically during quite turbulent times or uncertain times, whether it's just shifts in consumer behavior or economic pressure. And I'm very excited to have this conversation
I'm
with
excited
you.
to talk to you. Everything is going to be awesome.
Yeah, who would have thought just by talking about tariffs, we would use the word excitement 5 times?
I'm inundated with tariff conversations. I never expected that in my life. And now I'm on a different media channel about tariffs at least 2 to 4 times a week because it is the question of the year, I think, at this point. What the
Yeah,
heck do we do and what the heck is going on, essentially?
yeah. I think for us, I felt like the beginning of the year there was a lot of focus on AI, and it's completely shifted to tariffs. So you're having all these conversations with different size audiences and looking at businesses of different sizes as well. Can you tell me, like, are there some themes that are coming out when you're talking to, when there are the questions that you're getting that are quite consistent in your conversations?
Yeah, from the media side, it's a lot of just trying to understand what tariffs mean, especially in the beginning of the year. Most of the questions were, what are tariffs essentially? Tariffs are paid by the person receiving the goods, and at times that cost is passed to the consumer, but that's not a mandate to do so. Um, on the other end, the retailers are basically asking for timelines and depth of those tariffs,
Hmm.
which are tough to predict because in most government and economic situations, they are based upon a group. And in this case, it's one individual, the president, making these decisions. In addition, he's responding on these decisions rather quickly, so that there's a lot of confusion because you have to predict now. So if you're, for example, dealing with China, we're recording this now, May 13th, and that situation changed again. So for retailers, I think the biggest challenge is trying to combine all that information and say, how do I handle my supply chain? How do I handle my shipping? How do I handle my operations when I can't predict what's happening tomorrow, essentially?
Yeah. Yeah, we're hearing a lot around uncertainty with supply of goods. So again, um, earlier on when in the year when there was supposed to be this big tariff with China coming in, some retailers I was speaking to yesterday, they had actually done a lot of air shipments to bring in their goods really quickly, which of course then increases the price. So then there were, the knock on of how do you then pass on that price? Is it the consumer that's getting that price increase? Is it a margin reduction that's happening with the retailer? So we're seeing a lot of uncertainty the same way with supply chains, to think about how do you time goods coming in. Now with this 90-day pause, specifically with China, we're hearing that a lot of the shippers are back on their feet to move goods in time for what could come in the next few months.
That's what you mentioned AI, and you're from Parla Retail, and I think that's what makes it interesting with what you're working on. And anyone trying to optimize the operations, because those are variables you can control.
Yeah.
Control cutting your operations costs. You can control as much as you can the user experience, but it's tough to control the shipping. It's tough to say when this will be in.
Yeah.
But the more that you, I think, work on those variables you can control, just like in life, you can't control much. I do think it makes it easier for the consumer to at least process
Yeah,
it.
I totally agree.
Oh, go.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think that in any time of uncertainty, there's a few variables, like you said, that we need to take care of or that we need to control. And customer experience is something that, at the end of the day, if we think about this not as a short-term situation, but something that we need to invest in our customers and our brand over the long term, then we can look at the variables that we already have as a retailer, which could be team, it could be specific, footprints or digital assets, whether it's your social channels, and think about how, when you connect with a customer, do you make that connection even more meaningful so that you can really you can make an experience that kind of rises above what's happening with your P&L. So even if you have rising costs or uncertainty with your goods coming in, how do you, when you do connect with a customer in a store, how do you really provide them with an incredible customer experience and level of personalization where you can really improve your KPIs and have a great experience so that your customer is going to come back to you? So I agree with you that the variables that we can control are sometimes overlooked because we can get caught up in the uncertainty.
Well, yeah, one of questions I was asked very recently was about how Amazon was going to list the price of the tariffs, and then the White House protested it. But your world is that customer experience, and to me, anything that is transparent, maybe it's my background in the media world,
Yeah.
but transparency helps the customer experience. The more that you can not only express the cost, but express the shipping, express this is how the product's going to look, this is what you're going to get. Those questions to me are the ones that consumers hoping to get answered. And when things go wrong, simply saying transparently, this is the cost, or this is the delay, or this is what's going to affect this, I think is transparency is an answer to solve indecision. As much as you can have transparency.
Definitely. I think transparency also gives customers confidence. And I think in these uncertain times, it's confidence that customers are looking for. Either they can
Absolutely.
brand, yeah, that they understand what's going on. They're kind of brought into the conversation. And then if you are making these shopping decisions, you do know, again, with having that conversation with a salesperson or an interaction with a brand, if they're being transparent, it helps you as a customer just kind of through your journey and be more confident in what you're buying.
It's funny you say that, because I remember reading an article where it was discussing how the sales associates on the floor,
Yeah.
that their communication can affect the purchase almost more than anything else at times. Just that, and we're discussing now, you almost have to get the whole team on board to deal with tariffs. You have to now say the associates, this is how you're going to communicate, or you have a product to directly talk to the consumer, but that's the goal here, is to get out that message to the consumer through all the channels, whether it be the email communication, whether it be the direct associates on the floor, whomever, I think has to reach out and say, this is what's happening. We're doing our best. We're trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And I do think it's that combination that's most effective. You have to really give as much information in this unknown as much as possible.
Yeah, I think that's, you hit it. It's about making sure all your touch points with the customer are telling the same story and are delivering the same message. Whether it is through your people, through your, your marketing campaigns, even the checkout. If you talk about passing on tariffs to the customer, making that as clear and clear to the customer so that they understand what's going on.
Well, one of the things I always point to is when you go to the restaurant and you'll see things like 17 line items of extra charges, a seating charge and a tax and a tip and a for the kitchen staff, and most consumers just get turned off saying,
yeah,
I like the transparency. They want it, but they don't. They want it up front. They want to understand what they're dealing with. I think if you have restaurants that say it up front, it makes it easier.
Yeah.
We accept credit cards, the big sign up front.
Yeah.
And in this case, retailers saying, this is what we have. You're hitting it on all the channels. You're expressing that message. While we're having this convo, the other big message I'm getting is the timing, where they're trying, like, when will this end? Where do I go? And, a lot of retailers I'm talking to were discussing always having those alternatives in your shipping pipeline. So if you're relying on China and you don't have a contact elsewhere, or evaluating those domestic sources, seeing you need to have the backup plans, because if you can't produce your product in the right time,
yeah,
you can have other issues going on pretty quickly.
yeah.
So I suggest getting that all lined up ahead of time.
Yeah, we've seen it all, the same thing, that brands are looking for new suppliers in new countries, exactly what you're saying, which also then ends up being like an opportunity for different companies to step up and start to grow their business.
No, I've started multiple companies, all in bad timing in terms of the economy.
Yeah,
I do think when you have these moments, it's that moment in the economy to say, how do I readjust to this? How do I um, adapt to this situation? So I think retailers have an opportunity to almost reevaluate. I mentioned I've probably mentored or coached well over 100 plus retailers through COVID, and one of the things is I find they would get in these set patterns operationally. Maybe it's the same contract with the same person, and they're not really reevaluating. And to me, this is an interesting opportunity to take the energy to reevaluate. How do we do things differently? What were we doing that we might not want to do anymore, so to speak?
yeah, yeah. I agree. It's a great opportunity to look at, how you kind of can either double down on your existing resources and think creatively or innovatively about how you want to move forward, and go back to kind of the basics of your business, which I think in retail is always about the customer experience, and making sure the right product is there, whether it's what you have or coming from a new place. We're seeing a lot of retailers, kind of going back to what you said, double down on the salesperson. So rather than their e-commerce being very much just about solo browsing, where the customer is just, scrolling and scrolling and clicking aimlessly, and the only support is for chat or, customer service if you have a problem. They're removing that and actually bringing the salesperson front and center to the customer shopping online. So again, going back to this idea of how do I create a wonderful customer experience and invest in that, because I know that if I invest in my customers and their experience, it will help me kind of combat and create a ripple effect of a better experience, a purchase, and then a loyalty. So kind of creating feedback loops in a different way. and looking at variables in the company that may have been overlooked in the past.
I am fascinated, especially I was more born out of the online media world and getting that customer experience feedback firsthand for 30 plus years. And the basics were always there throughout. It was always, in that case, the delivery of information, or I just want to buy XYZ. I've lectured at universities, and I'll point to even in retail how we used to deliver milk to the front door, and that expectation has remained. The channel has changed now to Amazon Prime versus a drone delivery versus Uber
Mhm.
Eats. And I think the reason retail even exists is not that it's the goods themselves are the sole psychological driver. It's that experience, it's that emotion, it's that desire, it's that relationship. We're talking now about tariffs, and that has now, which is why the stock market and everything shook up, shaking that relationship of people saying, what is going to happen? Is this going to affect my goods? It's going to ruin Christmas.
Yeah.
It's the job of retailers to also explore their supply chains and explore their operations and their processes to not only for their business, but the ones who are cognizant of that are definitely going to be the ones I think who shine throughout this whole experience.
Yeah, I really love this outlook. I feel like it's been missing from a lot of the conversation around retail. It's been a lot of just how do I solve the problem about supply chain, or how do I solve the problem about communicating to my customers. But I love the lens that you're looking at this with, which is how do we how do we look at what we can control and innovate on those variables?
No, and I appreciate hearing that, and that has been um, 100% of my view or success in terms of business. You have to, you can only control what you can control, and you can only work on what you can. So you have to kind of uh, change the focus. Why do people buy stuff? And I think having seen for how many years stores come and go, pets.com exist and not exist, and you can point to a lot of these examples of these companies that were amazing and now dead. And the thing I think that became universal is that we lose that focus,
Yeah.
lose that moment of saying, why are we even doing what we're doing? I remember um, speaking, you and I, we had a conversation in Vegas. I think it was at Shop Talk,
Mhm.
and we just went through, what are you doing? What is the goal of what you're doing ultimately? But that's natural. That's human nature. We get inundated with this tariffs conversation. I'm almost scared to pull up on Google News all the conversations. And I think the retail and business needs to look at what are all these factors, what are the distractions, and what the heck did I start this business for? You start the business to get the product in the person's darn hands, and
Yeah.
that's the goal and the guiding light as opposed to the distraction of everything else.
Yeah. I love that. Just focusing on the fundamentals of why you're in the industry, and yeah, going back to the basics of the product and the customer. I think also what's interesting about our conversation here is drawing the similarity with COVID.
Yes.
Do you find that when you're having conversations with retailers, they are remembering and they're kind of relating this moment with tariffs to the uncertainty with COVID?
And pretty much traumatized through the uncertainty of COVID because that was the issue. It's the same issue.
Yeah.
Supply chains got hit, but there was the uncertainty. The question was, when does this tariff situation resolve? When does COVID resolve?
Yeah.
Um, and human nature and history has a wonderful way of repeating itself and responding the same way to
Yeah.
these traumas or effects. I also think if you think of COVID, DoorDash burst like there was no tomorrow. Um, there were communication channels I'm saying that because Parla Retail is a communication channel essentially,
Yeah.
and Zoom was really soared out of it. I remember there was Marco Polo that soared at one point, and there was a lot of these communication channels. So that to me becomes the focal point: is how do we work around this, and how do we solve this problem? We can't control anything. Is there any way we can control whatever it may be?
Yeah.
Or you can do so, the more I think life works in favor, so to speak.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. Because during COVID, I mean, the acceleration of digital investment for retail specifically, it just skyrocketed because people, companies had to. And now it became this huge competitive advantage. And now it's kind of like everyone is at the same place again. And now it's how do you think about that long-term strategy and going back to the fundamentals of retail to weather this storm because we've had it, so we kind of also almost like know what the playbook is.
Well,
If we
there's
had it
always
in,
going to be storms. I think it's so many times I'd have businesses call and tell me their storm,
yeah,
whatever it is. I was knocked out of Google, or Amazon's here. This is happening with Etsy and eBay, and they're always there.
yeah,
We always act shocked. And oh my goodness, is Amazon going to destroy XYZ? And the small retailer, and then retailers readjusted and went on Amazon, some of them, and some did Etsy, and some
yeah,
thrived throughout. But I do think it's the outlook. So when I talk to people on the tariffs, I cannot answer in particular what shipping company to ship their container in on Tuesday, May 7th, nor what will the tariff rate be next week.
yeah,
But I think it's an outlook mentality of how do you work around it? How do you solve it? How do you um, bring your business to that next place,
yeah,
whatever
yeah,
that may be?
yeah. It's really interesting because when you just think of tariffs as its own phenomenon right now, it's easy to ask the question of should I just wait it out and just see what happens?
Yeah, but the problem with waited out is the same as with COVID. I think we did do that during COVID. We all waited out and we lost our minds, and then it went through another wave. And it's, I think, dealing with them all as it currently is, as much as information you have, and saying, what is the best I can do? And one of the other things I always try to do is, one of my good friends always laughs at me for this. I call an expert in every area I have. So with the tariffs, I'm not I was never born to have that shipping. And, but I call people and I'll say, where do you see this going? Where do you see that going? Where's the market going?
Yeah,
Um, and then you take all that information and like any leader, you have to just do your best with all that information in that unknown. But yeah, during COVID, we didn't know when this will all end, and now we have tariffs. We don't know. We also don't know where it will go. Today, China was just resolved in the morning. Tomorrow, who knows? Well, resolved as much as could be based
yeah,
upon where the tariffs currently are at this point.
yeah,
Will it change again? I don't know.
yeah. Well, I love this retail wisdom that we've got right here and a reset in perspective.
It's not just retail. I think it's business in general. In business, you can get shocked on these events, and you can say, "Oh my goodness, this is happening! I can't believe it!" Or it's happening. We know it's happening. Now, what are we going to do? And you're calling your experts, and you're doing your best, and you're um, in fact, you and I have a lot of mutual experts in our pool. There's been many times I've called some of our mutual friends saying, "Hey, I'm stuck on this one, or I don't know what to do on this one. Help me get through this." And I think the more you are open to the possibility of learning from these experiences and saying, something new I need to understand, there's something new I need to solve, and help me figure it out. I think the better you get through them, the more you act shocked and say, now what?
Yeah,
It doesn't work.
yeah. Well, I think there's some great learnings from here, which are not really hard to execute on. Going back to basics of why are you in the business? Think about the variables you can control and make those work for you in ways that are compelling for your customer and their customer experience. And then from a supply chain perspective, look at kind of other sources or look for different options of where you can get your goods from. And I
And
think that,
mentality on it overall of just, I need to get through this and I need to solve this and figure out and talk to the people who can help me through it, basically.
yeah, yeah. And looking at this as a point of opportunity and a way to innovate and be creative with your business. I
Uh,
love that.
we try.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I loved this conversation. I feel like we're ending on a very positive, uplifting note.
I try faking positivity as much as I can, you know. Then I walk off and feel freaked out. But in the beginning, I'm positive at least.
Okay. Well, the smile helps. Big smiles help.
I try.
Thanks so
No,
much.
thank you for having me. And this is interesting. I'm looking forward to any of the feedback we get out of this too. They'll be very
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah, me too. Have a great afternoon. Thank
Awesome.
you.
All right.
Bye.